Every night, under the cold rain and the flickering streetlight, a lonely puppy sat by the same old bus stop, waiting for the boy who promised, "I'll come back for you." He didn't know how many nights had passed. He only knew one thing. The rain was falling again that night, soft and cold, like the sky itself was tired of crying. A small puppy sat beside an old bus stop, his fur soaked and heavy, his eyes fixed on the empty road ahead. Every car that passed made him lift his head with a spark of hope, but each time, the lights faded into the distance, and the road became quiet again. So he curled up beneath the rusty bench, tail tucked close, waiting for someone who never came. The puppy's name was Buddy. There was a time when he wasn't alone. Once, Buddy belonged to a boy named Ethan, a quiet 12-year-old with messy brown hair and the softest heart. Ethan had found Buddy when he was just a tiny ball of fur shivering behind a grocery store dumpster. It was raining then too. Ethan had taken off his jacket, wrapped the puppy inside it, and whispered, "It's okay, little guy. You're safe now." That moment became the start of something beautiful. Buddy grew up in a small wooden house near the edge of town. Every morning, Ethan would tie his sneakers while Buddy wagged his tail beside him, waiting to walk to the school bus stop together. And every afternoon, Buddy would wait by the window, ears perked, until the yellow bus screeched to a stop at the corner. Then he'd burst out of the door and race down the yard, barking with joy as Ethan jumped off the steps. They played in the yard, shared cookies, and fell asleep beside each other every night. To Buddy, Ethan wasn't just his owner. He was his entire world. But the world has a cruel way of changing when you least expect it. One gray November morning, Ethan's mother received a phone call that would change everything. It was a job offer, better pay, better future, but far away, in another state. She needed to move within weeks. Ethan didn't understand at first. He thought Buddy would come too, like always. But when his mom explained that the new apartment didn't allow pets, the boy's face went pale. "But he's family," Ethan said, his voice trembling. "I'll hide him. He won't bark." "Please, Mom." She sighed, tears in her eyes. "Honey, I wish we could. It's just for a little while. I promise we'll come back for him." Ethan didn't sleep that night. He lay on his bed with Buddy curled beside him, both quiet, both feeling something heavy and invisible pressing on their hearts. When morning came, he carried Buddy to the car. The puppy wagged his tail, thinking they were going for another adventure. But the car didn't stop at the park or the diner, it kept going, farther and farther until they reached Ethan's uncle's farm at the edge of town. Ethan knelt in the grass and hugged Buddy tightly. "I'll come back for you," he whispered. "I promise. Just wait for me." Buddy licked his face, not knowing what the words meant, but trusting the voice that had always kept him safe. Ethan left a blanket, a bowl of water, and one last look before his mom called him back to the car. As they drove away, Buddy barked and ran behind them until his little legs couldn't carry him anymore. He stopped near a tree, panting, his tail still wagging faintly, eyes watching the road long after the car disappeared. Days passed. Then weeks. The uncle fed Buddy for a while, but soon, life got busy and the visits grew rare. When the farm was sold months later, Buddy was left behind. He stayed near the tree for a while, waiting, sniffing the wind for Ethan's scent. But when hunger grew too strong, he began to wander. The road was long, stretching between fields and small houses. Buddy followed it, guided by memory, the smell of gasoline, the echo of car doors, the faint whisper of "wait for me." He reached the old bus stop by the town's edge, where cars slowed before vanishing into the highway. Maybe Ethan would come this way, Buddy thought. Maybe this is where he'd find him. So he waited. Through scorching days and freezing nights, through thunderstorms and snow, Buddy waited. Sometimes strangers would stop and leave food. Sometimes children would try to play with him, but he never followed anyone home. His heart belonged to one boy only, and that boy had promised to return. Seasons changed. The puppy grew older. His fur turned rough, his body thinner, but his eyes, those soft, hopeful eyes, never stopped looking down the road. One evening, a little girl named Mia walked by with her mother. She saw Buddy curled beneath the bus stop, his fur matted, his paws muddy. "Mommy, look. That dog's all alone," she said. Her mother frowned. "Don't touch him, sweetheart. He might be dangerous." But Mia couldn't stop thinking about him. The next day, she came back with a peanut butter sandwich wrapped in foil. She left it quietly beside him. Buddy lifted his head, wagged his tail once, and took a careful bite. For weeks, Mia visited him after school. She brought him blankets, water, sometimes even small toys. Buddy began to trust her, but every time a car passed, he'd look up again, ears twitching, heart racing. Mia noticed. One afternoon, she said softly, "You're waiting for someone, aren't you?" Buddy just looked down the road. Christmas came and the snow returned. Mia told her mother, "If he's still there by Christmas Eve, can we take him to the shelter?" Her mom hesitated, then nodded. But when Christmas Eve came, and Mia arrived at the bus stop with a leash in her hand, Buddy wasn't there. His blanket lay in the snow, wet and cold, but he was gone. Mia cried that night, thinking the worst. But Buddy hadn't gone far. He had followed a smell, faint, old, but familiar. It came from the direction of the town center, carried by the wind. Maybe, just maybe, it was him. Miles away, an 18-year-old young man stepped off a bus with a small backpack and tired eyes. It was Ethan. After 6 years, he was back. His mother had passed away the previous year, and life had been hard. But there was one promise he still remembered, the one he made to his puppy under that tree. He walked the old roads, now cracked and overgrown with weeds, searching for something he feared he'd never find. When he reached the bus stop, he stopped walking. The bench was still there, the same one from his childhood memories. He took a deep breath. "Buddy," he whispered. There was no sound at first. Just the soft patter of rain. Then, from under the bench, came a faint movement. A small, shivering dog lifted his head. His fur was gray around the muzzle now, his eyes cloudy with age. But when he saw Ethan, he froze. Then his tail moved, slowly, hesitantly, and suddenly he was on his feet, stumbling forward with a cry that sounded half like a bark, half like a sob. Ethan dropped to his knees. "Buddy! Oh my God, Buddy!" He opened his arms, and Buddy leapt into them, whining, licking, trembling with joy. Ethan held him tight, tears falling freely. "I'm sorry," he whispered over and over. "I'm so sorry I left you." Buddy buried his face into Ethan's chest and let out a sound that could only be described as relief. He had waited all those nights through thunder, hunger, and loneliness, and now, finally, his boy was here. Ethan carried him home that night. The apartment was small, but warm, filled with the smell of coffee and old books. He gave Buddy a bath, a bowl of chicken, and a soft bed beside his own. Buddy slept for hours, breathing peacefully for the first time in years. In the mornings, Ethan took him to the park. Buddy's steps were slower now, but his tail wagged proudly. Sometimes, people stopped to pet him, and Ethan would smile, saying, "He's been through a lot. He's my best friend." Mia saw them once from across the park and smiled. The lonely dog finally had someone to walk beside him again. But time doesn't stop, not even for love. One cold winter night, the snow fell thick outside. Ethan sat beside Buddy's bed, brushing his fur softly. The old dog's breathing was shallow, his eyes tired but peaceful. "Hey, Buddy," Ethan whispered, voice breaking. "You remember how you used to wait for me? You don't have to wait anymore. I'm here now. I promise." Buddy looked at him, his eyes glimmering with something pure and endless. He wagged his tail once, pressed his head into Ethan's knee, and exhaled. Slowly, quietly, he drifted away. Ethan didn't move for a long time. He just sat there, holding him, tears running down his face, whispering thank you. Because how do you say goodbye to someone who waited for you through every storm? The next morning, the world was silent. Ethan buried Buddy beneath the big oak tree near the bus stop, the same spot where he used to wait. He placed a wooden sign in the ground that read, "For Buddy, who waited with love every night." Days turned into weeks again. People who passed by said sometimes, during quiet rainy nights, they could see a shape under the bench, small, with a wagging tail, watching the road. Maybe it was just shadows. Maybe not. Ethan often visited that spot, bringing flowers or sitting silently, remembering the sound of soft paws and happy barks. And every time it rained, he'd look down the road and whisper, "You kept your promise, Buddy. You never gave up." He would smile through the tears, knowing that somewhere, beyond all the pain and all the waiting, a loyal heart was finally at peace. Because some bonds never break. Some love stories never end. They just live quietly, in the sound of rain, in the whisper of memory, in the faithful heart of a dog who waited every night. They just live quietly, in the sound of rain, in the whisper of memory, in the faithful heart of a dog who waited every night. Months passed. The little town changed slowly, new houses were built, the old bus stop got repaired, and a bright yellow bench replaced the rusty one. But for Ethan, nothing could ever replace the empty space beside him. Every morning he'd pour 2 cups of coffee, one for himself, and one he'd leave on the porch rail, the way he used to when Buddy sat watching the sunrise. Neighbors often saw him sitting out there, a faint smile on his face, eyes distant but peaceful. Some people said he was lonely. But Ethan knew better. He wasn't alone. Not really. Love like that doesn't vanish, it just changes form. Sometimes, when rain would begin to fall, he'd grab his coat and walk down to the bus stop. The wind would whistle through the fields, carrying the soft smell of wet grass, and he'd sit on that bench for a while, listening to the sound of the raindrops hitting the ground, exactly the way it sounded that first night Buddy waited there. Once, as he sat there under the drizzle, he swore he felt something brush against his hand. He looked down, and for a moment, just a moment, he saw a small golden blur, a wagging tail, and warm eyes looking up at him. Then it was gone. Ethan smiled. "Still keeping watch, huh?" he whispered to the empty air. After that day, he began volunteering at the local animal shelter. Every weekend, he'd walk the dogs that came in, scared, abandoned, trembling. He'd sit with them, stroke their heads, and tell them stories about a brave little puppy named Buddy who once waited every night because he believed love would come back. The dogs would calm down, as if they understood every word. One rainy evening, a small puppy arrived at the shelter, soaked, weak, shivering. Ethan picked him up gently. The puppy's fur was golden, and his eyes, those eyes looked too familiar. The same spark of hope, the same silent trust. Ethan held him close, heart trembling. "You look just like him," he whispered. He took the puppy home that night and named him Chance, because life had given him one more chance to love again. Chance followed Ethan everywhere, curling up by his feet when he wrote or resting beside him during rainy afternoons. And though Ethan never said it out loud, sometimes he felt that Buddy's spirit was still there, watching over them both. Years rolled by quietly. Ethan grew older, his hair turning gray, but his heart remained young, because every wag, every bark, every warm breath beside him reminded him of what loyalty truly meant. When he finally passed away, peacefully in his sleep, neighbors found a note on his bedside table. It was written in shaky handwriting, but the words were clear. If love could take form, it would look like a dog who never gave up. If loyalty could speak, it would say, "I waited because I believed. I'm going home now. Buddy's been waiting long enough." At his funeral, the sky opened up gently, and a light rain began to fall. People said it felt like a blessing. And those who passed by the old bus stop that evening swore they saw 2 shadows sitting side by side beneath the bench, one man, one dog, watching the road together, the way they always did. Some stories never end because love doesn't need words to stay alive. It just finds new ways to keep existing, in memories, in moments, in quiet rain-soaked nights where hearts still listen for the sound of footsteps coming home. And so, even now, when the rain begins to fall softly over the little town, the wind seems to whisper one name. Buddy. And somewhere, beyond the mist and the miles, a loyal tail wags once more. The rain had stopped hours ago, but the air still carried that sweet, clean scent that follows every storm. The sky was painted in gold and lavender as the sun dipped behind the hills, casting long shadows across the quiet town. The bus stop stood there still, freshly painted now, with flowers blooming beneath it. People passed by it every day, but few knew the story of what had once happened there. Every year, on the same day Buddy was found, the animal shelter held a small event. They called it Buddy's Day. Children brought their dogs, families adopted new ones, and old photos of Ethan and Buddy sat framed beside a small candle. The volunteers told the story of a little dog who never stopped waiting and a boy who never stopped believing. Some people cried quietly, others just smiled, holding their pets a little tighter. No one knew who first started it, but someone had carved tiny words into the wooden bench. They read, "Love always finds its way home." Late one evening, long after the event had ended, a light drizzle began again. The town fell silent, streetlights humming softly. A teenage boy walking home saw something that made him stop. Beneath the bench, two faint shapes shimmered in the rain, a young man and a small dog sitting side by side, their eyes glowing gently in the light. The boy blinked, and they were gone. But he swore he heard a bark, soft, joyful, familiar, carried away with the wind. Years turned into decades. The town grew larger, busier. New families came, old faces faded. But the story of the lonely puppy who waited every night became something more than a memory, it became a legend. Parents told it to their children when they adopted a dog, whispering, "Always keep your promises. Someone out there might be waiting for you." Some nights, when the rain was especially heavy, people claimed they could still see a small dog walking down the road near the bus stop, his paws leaving no prints behind. He never looked lost, only peaceful, like he was keeping watch. And if you listened closely, you could almost hear a young man's voice laughing softly beside him. Time moved forward, but love, real love, doesn't fade. It becomes part of the world itself. It lives in the raindrops that kiss the earth, in the soft patter against old benches, in the hearts of everyone who believes that some bonds can outlast even goodbye. Somewhere, beyond the horizon, where sunlight meets the clouds, Ethan and Buddy walked together again. No more waiting. No more rain. Just endless fields, golden and warm, where they run side by side, forever young, forever home. And when the wind sweeps through the little town, rustling the flowers under the bus stop, it carries with it the softest echo of two hearts reunited. I told you I'd come back. I knew you would. The world is quiet again. The rain has stopped. But the love of one lonely puppy still lingers, in every heartbeat, every home, every soul that ever waited for someone they loved. Because some promises never die. They just keep waiting, patiently, faithfully, until love finally comes home.